1700, which means that when the exchange rate moves 1 unit, our dollar value will go up or down by 1700. So then we short forward 1700 pounds, and since after we're using the forward to hedge, we'll be holding two assets. The total value is determined by the value of the asset itself and also the profit and loss of forward. To calculate profit or loss for forward, we take the forward price minus the spot because we take a short position. If we take a long position, then it will be S minus X, the opposite case. So for case number 1, we calculated that if outcome 1 occurs, we profited 170, outcome 2 nothing, outcome 3 lost 170. So the ending value is the dollar value 1 plus the profit and loss from the forward 2. We add it together, so we have 3 outcomes but only 2 numbers. So obviously we substantially reduce the variance when we add this forward. So that's case number 1. Case number 2 is a special case that we have a fixed pound value, which is 1,000. So that's our exposure. Even though the exchange rate changes, of course that makes our dollar value change. But since the pound value is fixed, when we multiply the pound value with the exchange rate, we can perfectly line those 3 observations on the same line. So this is a case we can completely eliminate the risk. So at the end, we have a 0 variance. We have across the board with $1,500.
What is what's the 667 here?
That's the variance of this 300.
Okay. How do you calculate that again? With a calculator or?
You can do a calculator, but I think we went over that last time.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that in good time.
Okay.
For the eagle, for this one, is obviously there's no variance, but you can also calculate variance in case there's even numbers. The third case is that another special case. Even though we have 3 different pound values, we have 3 different exchange rates, but at the end, we have the same fixed dollar value, so there's no variance at all. So therefore, we don't have to hedge under case number 2. I believe this is where we stopped last time. Today, let's look at operating exposure. Second thing that can affect company value and exchange rate changes. Definition: operating exposure can be defined as the extent to which firm's operating cash flows will be affected by random changes in exchange rates. So we're going to focus on, because when we value a firm, when you use discounted cash flow, basically we're looking at company's future cash flows. Now when the exchange rate changes, how would that affect the cash flow? So when the cash flow affected, that affect the present value of the firm. Now a company's cash flow can be affected when the exchange rate changes through 2 different effects. Now, for example, suppose a U.S. firm has a British subsidiary which imports parts from U.S., produces, sells products in UK. So this is a U.S. company, but a subsidiary in UK. Now for this UK subsidiary, they produce their products in UK. The production cost is in terms of pounds. However, they import part from US. So part of the production cost is in US dollar. They produce and sell products in UK. So therefore their earnings is in pound also. Right, so production cost in terms of pound, but part of it is in US dollar. Now earnings is in pound. If pound depreciates, the cash flow in US dollar will be affected due to number 1, competitive effect. How will this UK subsidiary's cash flow be affected when pound depreciates? In terms of pound? Or would it be affected? Will the UK subsidiary's pound cash flow be affected when pound depreciates? They produce their goods in UK, they sell their goods in UK. Yeah. In which way?
Well, the cost of their imported goods.
Thank you for reading that for us. Alright, so that's right. Of course, that's right. I put out the slides myself. Because part of the cost come from in US dollar. So when pound depreciate, that means our production cost increase. So the cost of product in terms of pound also increase because production costs increase. So the company might have to adjust price to when the exchange rate depreciates. So when you adjust the price, how will that affect your competitive position in the market? So cash flow can be affected, number one. So through competitive effect. Second one, for that. Alright, now whether the company should adjust the price or not, depending on how severe competition is in the market. And also depending on the demand elasticity. If there's no serious competition, if demand is inelastic, so from your economics, when the demand is inelastic, that means when you change the price, demand won't be affected as much. So in that case, you can adjust the price and demand will not be affected. However, if the demand is elastic, when you change the price, that has to hurt the sales, so that can affect the cash flow. Okay, so again, depending on what kind of product you're selling, how competitive your product is in the market. So the first one, competitive effect. The second one, conversion. Remember, this is a subsidiary of a U.S. firm. At the end, the parent company needs to convert the cash flow back to U.S. dollar. So when pound depreciates, cash flow in terms of pound, in terms of dollar can be affected as well. All right, so let's look at this Excel file. We're going to work this on Excel. Anyone not have a computer? Yeah. It's a hard copy. Thank you. So we have a U.S. computer company which has a British subsidiary called Albion, and this Albion in UK, located in UK, imports microprocessors from Intel manufacturers and sells computer in UK. So basically, it's an example I used before. Some basic information: the cost of processor, so imported from Intel, so the price is equal to US dollar, $512 per unit. Cost of local inputs is £330. So we need to calculate variable cost total per unit. Assuming that exchange rate is 1.6, corporate tax 50%, depreciation £1 million. Selling price in UK is £1,000. We can calculate equivalent dollar value or dollar selling price. Fixed costs assume is £4 million. Inflation is 8% in UK. And sales is 50,000 units. We're going to look at, this is I call it base case. So we're going to look at the cash flow in this base case, and we're going to look at three different variations of three cases. Before we look at the three cases, let's first fill in the blanks. So total variable cost equal to, so we're going to sum the cost of processor and the cost of local inputs. But the processor is in US dollars, so we need to do a conversion. So we take B8, which is processor price, divided by B11. So that gives me the pound value, pound price of the processor. Then add the cost of local inputs, £330. So that gives us the total variable cost, £650. Second cell to be filled. Selling price, we're simply just trying to figure out what is equivalent in US dollar. So we take the pound selling price times spot exchange rate 1.6, so B14 times B11. So equivalently, £1,000 is $1,500. Any questions? Alright, we're going to look at these three cases, but anyway, let's finish the base case first, then we'll talk about these three cases. Alright, so let's take a look at calculating the cash flow. So from the base case, then we calculate the revenue. So we take total number of units of sales 50,000 from B18 times each one is £1,000, B14, so equal B18 times B14. Right, so revenue 50 million pounds, variable cost, total 50,000 units from B18 times total variable cost is 650 pounds per unit, so B18 times B10. $32.5 million. Fixed cost is just equal to B16. Fixed cost is fixed at £4 million, so B16. Then depreciation equal to £1 million, B13. Any questions so far?
We're just gonna flatline depreciation every year, same.
Yeah. Profit before tax, so we take revenue B22 minus variable cost B23 minus fixed cost B24 minus depreciation B25. Revenue minus all the costs and depreciation. £12.5 million before tax. Income tax, assuming it's 50%. So we take the profit before tax from B26 times 50%, so B12. Make sure you're just not entering the number. You have to link all the back to the sales. Okay, later we're going to do sensitivity analysis. If we don't link it back to the sales, then it won't work. Alright, sales tax 50%, so B26 times B12, so half of it. The profit after tax, profit before tax minus income tax, £6.25 million. Any questions so far? Now, what is the difference between profits and cash flow? When we calculate a company's value, do we use the cash flow to calculate value or profits?
Cash flow.
We use cash flow. So when we calculate the profits, we take out depreciation before we compute income tax, right? Because government allows us to take out the depreciation. But we really didn't spend £1 million. £1 million to depreciate. So therefore, when we calculate cash flow, we can add back the depreciation. So let's put depreciation back equal to B13. So operating cash flow in terms of pound equal to profit after tax plus depreciation, B28 plus B29. 7.25 million pounds. Then convert it to dollar. We take the pound cash flow, P30, times exchange rate, so go back up to P11.
Why did you add the depreciation back on the operating cash flow?
Why do we add the depreciation back? Is that the question? Because we didn't actually spend £1 million depreciate. Right. So we have the £1 million. The reason we deduct £1 million here is that government allows us to deduct it, so we don't have to pay as much tax.
Okay.
So this item actually doesn't exist on the cash flow.
Okay.
So we add it back. Yeah, I was thinking when we were doing this exercise, when we do the conversion from pound to dollar, from thousand pound, we have only not including the exam day next on Thursday, we have only one class left. So we are closing the semester, and hopefully if you learn nothing from the semester, I hope that you at least know how to do a conversion. You know when to multiply and divide. There was actually at the beginning of the semester, there was a thought in my mind that if you cannot do the conversion at the test, then it's automatically 0. But I thought it's a little too harsh because for many of you, this is the first time we're working on the exchange rates. So anyway, but we are closing the semester, so make sure you know how to divide will be multiply. Alright, so
We're in good shape, though, right? This class is not anywhere near that problem. Come on.
Right, so 11.6 million. 11.6 million.
Could you go back up to the top real quick? I just need to
Which one?
B10. I just need to see that.
Right here?
Yeah.
Alright, so we're going to look at 3 variations, case 1, 2, and 3. For case 1, we're going to assume that exchange rate depreciate, pound depreciate to 1.4. So when pound depreciates, again, 2 effects, competitive effect and conversion effect. So we're going to make different assumptions on the different cases. The first one, case number 1, when pound depreciates to 1.4, we know that the cost of processor will increase in terms of pound, because pound is cheaper now. And that will affect the cash, operating cash flow, the conversion effect, when we convert from pound to dollar. Right, when pound depreciate, we get back less in terms of dollar. That's case number 1. Case number 2, again, we're going to assume that pound depreciates to 1.4. Then we're going to make some adjustment on pricing. Assuming that company wants to keep $1,600 in terms of dollar, they want to have $1,600 in selling price. So when the exchange rate dropped to 1.4, then we're going to recalculate what should be the pound value, pound price, so that can make equivalent to 1,600. And in case number 2, we're going to assume that demand is inelastic, which means that we still have 50,000 units of sales. Case number 3 is probably more realistic. We're going to again depreciate pound 1.4. We're going to make some adjustments on the cost of local inputs, the selling price based on inflation. Okay, so here's where we kick in the inflation, 8%. We're going to increase local input by 8%. Price will be adjusted according to inflation, 8%. Assuming that demand is elastic, so therefore when we change the price, we assume the sales will drop to 40,000 units. We're going to use the sensitivity analysis function. So if you go to the data, on the top of one of the tabs for data, and where is the sensitivity quality of analysis right here. you're using that, it might look a little different. Have you used the function before? Yes. Because we all know how to do this.
This is my first time.
Your first time? Okay. Alright, so on the data, what if analysis? Click in. The first one is called Scenario Manager. So choose Scenario Manager. Obviously, I wrote this file before, and just delete all three. And start fresh.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I actually we complete file view.
Yeah.
Let's just delete everything. That's
All the cases, right?
yeah, delete all the cases.
How do you get to the scenario?
Huh?
How do you get to that right there?
Data. Right, data. And this what if analysis. Click in. The first one is Scenario Manager. Alright, so we're gonna add case number 1. So you press add. Scenario name, you can enter any name you like. Let me just call it case 1. Alright, so we're going to change scenario, so therefore changing cell, for case number 1, we're going to change it, change it to 1.4. So therefore for changing cell, we're going to click B11. You just click the cell you want to change. Are you working? And press OK. Then you will ask now what value you want to change to. So we want to change to 1.4, so just manually enter 1.4. And press OK. Let's look at case 1 first. Alright, then we want to see how it will affect the cash flow. So click Summary. Then you ask us now, what do we want to see? So actually, we want to see the cash flow change. So I'll just highlight and block those 2 cells. Operating cash flow in pound, operating cash flow in dollar. So we want to see the changes of those 2 cells.
So you highlight those 2 cells?
Yeah, I highlight those 2 cells.
Okay.
Okay, and press OK. And you should see the same thing as me. We can make it nicer. We change the pound value. And we have cash flow in pound. Cash flow in dollar. And so it shows us that current values are base case. Case number 1, we change pound from 1.6 to 1.4. Now when we depreciate to 1.4, everything else stays the same. So the cash flow count, you see how much it decreased in terms of dollar, how much it decreased. Any questions? Let's go back to the base case, tax base. Now we're going to add case 2 and case 3. Go back to the what if analysis on the data, click it back in the scenario manager. Case 1 is still there. Let's just add another one, so press add. Case.
So you can see what happens. I think it's what we do it all faster.
It takes time. Just like the same issue with Apple with Mac, it takes some time for the base case to come back. Then you have my computer do the same thing. All right, so again we go back to the base case. So on the data, taking what if analysis, then choose scenario manager. Then we're going to add case 2. For case 2, we're going to not only changing the exchange rate, but also change the selling price, and that's it. So in addition to, we click the exchange rate B11. Then I'll put a comma up there, and I'll click also the selling price of pound. Or you can just press Control and click the cell. Either way is fine. When you want to add another cell to change. So you can either just put a comma there and press another cell, or you can just press Control key and click the cell you want to change.
Wait, I'm sorry, what did you do? I didn't see.
Alright, let me clear all the changing cells and start over. So first, if the exchange rate wants to change, so click the cell of the exchange rate. Then you can just simply press the Control key on the keyboard and press the selling price. We're going to change 2 cells this time. Okay. We'll go to the next step. Press OK. Alright, so again, the first thing is the exchange rate that changed to 1.4. The second thing is the selling price in terms of pounds. Now this time we can use our calculator to figure out. We want to have the equivalent price of $1,600, but now exchange is 1.4 instead of 1.6. So assuming that exchange is 1.4. So to have $1,600, how much pound it need to be?
1,400.
Huh?
1,400.
14 exactly?
I think so. 1.4.
No, 1.4.
1142.
No, 1142. If it's 1.6, then it's 1,000. If it's 1.4, 1142. So 1142. That means let's be more precise. Let's keep 2 decimal points. 1142.86. So if you change, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. If the exchange rate is 1.4 and the selling price is 1142, then it's equivalent to $1,600. I take $1,600 divided by 1.4.
And what would that be? The selling, what is that?
Hmm?
What is that?
That means we are changing this cell. For case number 2, we're changing this cell. So we're going to change this cell to 1142.86. So that given the exchange rate now is 1.4, when I take 1146 times 1.4 is the same as 1,600 as before.
Okay.
That's our goal. We want to keep it at $1,600 as the selling price in US dollar.
Okay.
Alright, so that's the only 2 things we changed. So press OK. Summary. Alright, same thing. We're going to show this change of the cash flow. So same these 2 cells. So press OK. And so now we have 2 different pages. So page 2, we change 2 cells. We change it 1.4 and selling price account 1143. So we see how much the cash flow changes now in dollar. I'll go back to the base case. It's going to take you a while for you to show up. You see the already? Okay. The computer is learning too. I'll go back to scenario manager. Let's add the last case. So case number 3. Don't forget to change sales. This time, there are 2 more cells need to be changed. In addition to the exchange rate to 1.4, we're going to change the local input. So that'll be this cell, B9. We're going to change the selling price, B14. We're going to change the sales also, which is B18. So let me just clear the changing cell here. Start over. So the first one will be exchange rate, B11. No, that's not the first one. I want to change the variable cost first. So the first one is the cost of local inputs, B9. Then I hold my control key. Then I press the exchange rate, B11. Then selling price, B14. And then sales total units, B18. We're going to change 4 cells. We're done. You can press OK. Alright, now change value. First one is cost of local inputs. It was 330 pounds. Our increase with the inflation. So that's just increase 330 times 1.08. Will be 356.4. The exchange rate changed to 1.4. Selling price increase with inflation, so 1,080. Number of unit of sales changed to 40,000. Once you're done entering those numbers, just press OK. Okay, go to summary. We'll only see those 2 cells still. Press OK. The second one is
How did you, for case 3, how did you get the 1080?
It was 1,000, right? The selling price was 1,000,
Oh.
increased by 8%. So times 1.08. So now we can take a look at how much it affected. Case 1, 2, and 3. Now case 2 is the best case. I would assume that sales will not be affected, so we increase the price. Actually, we have actually a higher cash flow in terms of dollar and in terms of pound. Case number 3 probably more realistic. We increase the price with inflation. The local input increase with inflation. The number of unit sales decrease when price change. So we have the lowest cash flow in pound and dollar. What's good about this function of Excel is that we highlighted the sales. It shows us what sales we change. We want to take a look at how much actually affected. So that's, I'm going to increase, insert 2 rows here. The first one, let's take a look at change. We're going to take a look at change of cash flow in terms of dollar. So I'm going to compare under case 1, 2, and 3. How much will that change compared to 11.6 million? So I will take for case 1 equal to. So case 1's cash flow in dollars E12 minus B12, the base case cash flow in dollar. So I want to fix B12. I can just drag the cells to copy in those functions. I want to enter the So compared to the base case, case 1, when exchange rate dropped to 1.4, our cash flow dropped $3.05 million. Now for case 2 and 3, I can just drag it over. So for case 2, yeah.
Professor Luke, if you get something goofed up and it seems like it carries it over in the summary, how can you get it where it just shows you a scenario summary with all cases in the base that's correct? It's like, you know what I'm saying? Because like every time you do one, right, it comes up the new tab, right? And then as you add more cells to the changing cells, it adds that, right? So unfortunately, I have some mistakes somewhere. This is correct. This one right. Yeah, this one should be 9,062. So how about 16 so that I'll show this. Then add. Now, these are the salt
Oh, you can add some stuff.
Asia.
It's gonna end me like my only slide is saying that you dropped 20%. That's it. Yeah, I got the easy ones.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For each portion. Like the test scores. You just add up all 3 test scores.
Anyone has any problem getting those numbers? No, I understand.
Did you actually change any of the numbers in the base spreadsheet? Or did you just let the scenario manager change it? Because if you change them yourself, then it messes it up.
I did show in the message overwrite. So I did that. Show. So that's things.
He's just retired.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Alright, so now this tells us how much is the cash flow can be affected under different assumptions. Now the last thing I want to take a look at on this table is, let's just add one more thing. But remember, our goal is that when exchange rate changes, how much would my company value be affected? So when exchange rate changes and affect the cash flow. Now, how do we translate those cash flows to company value? Now, assuming that, of course, we let's keep it simple. Let's assume that every year, suppose we do nothing, suppose market stay the same, and that's the condition we are facing. So every year we have that much change on the exchange rate. I mean the cash flow. So how much would that translate to the company value? So suppose let's look at for example scenario 1, case 1. So year 1, 5 million. Year 2, how much is the present value of all this future loss on cash flow? How do we do the calculation?
Discount rate.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Good point. Right, discount rate. Let's assume that the cost of capital equal to, let's say it's 10%. Right. So not 10%. What's next? So discount rate is 10%. So what is the present value of all the future cash flow loss? Translate to the company value. How do we figure out? What is the present value of those negative 3.05 million? How do we calculate the present value?
Future value divided by 1 over
Or
cost of the discount times the power of the payment.
How many terms are there? Infinity. How do we do that? When there's no ending period, there's a special term for we have fixed perpetuity. So for perpetuity, present value of the future cash flow equal to the cash flow divided by R. Right? So simply divided by R. So therefore, we can calculate the present value of the loss of cash flow. So take for case 1, we take change in dollar cash flow divided by the cost of capital 10%. And let me fix the cell. Capital.
How do you fix the cell?
F4. So enter. And then drag it over. So then we can also change the cost of capital if it's 8%. Now change for us is 15%, how will that affect us, etc. We can play around.
Did you do that in terms of dollars or?
It's in terms of dollars. Any questions? The result can be very different based on our assumption. It's all based on our assumption. But of course, lots of times the assumption might not be right. But we have to assume something because we don't know the future. So that's why it's good to do the sensitivity analysis. Right? If the exchange rate goes this much, that much, this way, that way, etc. We can take a look at how it will affect. Now, when I was in graduate school, in the PhD program, we have to come up with the theory. Before we start to derive a theory, assumption is the most important thing. I remember my professor told us how important is assumption. He said that it's pretty much like a magician. Precision put out rabbits from a hat, right? He said that it's really not that important how he put the rabbit out of the hat. It's more important how he put the rabbit in the hat. So something is how we put the rabbit in the hat. So that's how we get out of it.
divided by the black.
Alright, any questions on this exercise? Alright, let's go back to the PowerPoint slides, and we want to know how to manage those operating cash flow exposure. Now the key is to stabilize cash flow. We don't want our cash flow to fluctuate too much. That when there's fluctuation, that represents risk. When there's risk, investors will tend to depress the stock price. So we want to stabilize it. There are a few strategies we can do to stabilize cash flow, including selecting low-cost production site, flexible sourcing policy, market diversification, differentiation of products, R&D efforts, and financial hedge. Quickly go over each one of them. Actually, the first one is pretty much similar to the second one. We try to control the production cost. If we can control production cost by producing at a low-cost site or buy material at cheaper price, then we can control production cost. We have bigger room to play with the pricing policy. When the exchange rate changes, fluctuates, then we have room to make adjustments. Market diversification. Now, this is not just to diversify your product. You try to diversify the market. Not only focusing on one market, one country versus the other, but you want to diversify it because when the exchange rate changes, most of the time exchange rate don't move perfectly together. It's like when you make investment, right? You don't just put all your eggs in one basket, unless you are big enough on the Easter Sunday. So maybe you have an example. You have the product sold in UK and also in Mexico. Now, pound value might not move the same direction as Mexican peso. So when pound depreciates, so my cash flow decrease from the UK market, but maybe Mexican peso price increase. So my cash flow increase in the Mexican market. So therefore, when we diversify the market, we can stabilize the cash flow because exchange rate don't move in the same direction. Number 3, try to make your product more competitive. If your product is more competitive, then the demand will be less elastic. So you can adjust the price while not hurting much on sales. So do more research development, try to create unique products, make your product more competitive. The last one is we can still use financial contract to hedge. In this case, in our example, UK, the US parent company have a subsidiary in UK. Now let's borrow pounds to operate a business. So when pound depreciates, in our example, right, our cash flow in terms of pounds got hurt because the cost of production increased and also the conversion effect, right? So even though the cash flow from the business itself dropped, but because we borrow pounds, so the amount of money I borrowed also decreased because pound value decreased. Okay, so I don't owe as much. So that those can be canceled out. So we can also use financial contract to hedge. Any questions? Yeah.
I guess I'm struggling with the fact that I am an international company and doing price for whatever product I'm selling. Wouldn't I just, based on our analysis, would it make sense conceptually just peg all of my other international prices to one particular currency, such as the dollar, and then just say whatever the dollar's worth, it's just going to cost that much, and therefore I don't need to worry about all the other parts.
But the problem is, are you able to fix everything in dollar?
I don't know. I mean, wouldn't that just make more sense though? Is that like a common practice?
Like for example, you might be doing business with a company in China, and they want to have everything priced in Chinese yuan.
Okay.
They're just on the other side of you. The other side of you. They want to have everything in Chinese yuan. So you can so they don't want to do it in dollar.
But whatever this, maybe I'm just overthinking this, but like whatever the spot rate is at that time, or then that's how much it will cost in Chinese yen.
Okay, but that's on the assumption that you're going to either pay or receive everything at the time, right?
Yeah.
But what is
So
the
prices don't change, fluctuate that much? Is that what you're saying?
what it?
Remember Daniel's story where he said it was cheaper to fly from Turkey from Istanbul to buy an iPhone and to buy one in Turkey because the value of Turkish just went down. So they had paid like $2. Right, so you're saying that they had paid $2. That's what you see, right? The price would just continue to fall and climb.
Right. The prices of whatever market you're in. Sorry for I'm just stuck on this.
No, that's
It's
fine.
like whatever market you're in, it could be China, it could be Japan. It's just going to reflect the current spot exchange rate pegged against $1 prices.
But if the price climbs so high people can't afford to buy it, is it beneficial for you as a firm or is it?
Maybe I didn't get your question.
I think we're talking about the present, right? Because you say that they just take this foreign exchange, but we're talking about that it's happening in the future, that it all actually changes.
Right. So
in like the paper industry, almost it doesn't make a lot of sense for European paper to move into the U.S. most of the time, the shipping costs. But whenever the euro to U.S. dollar exchange rate falls below 1.3, we would know European companies would start shipping paper over. It would be like the trigger every single time, every year. Not because it was pegged to the dollar, but because they could sell now into the U.S. profitably.
okay.
And that's how,
So that's what we're looking for on this.
sort of, yeah, well, not exactly that here, but that's an example of how the company, like a European firm, would think about it. And also American ones would too. If you were running these companies, you would know, oh shoot, it's now 1.2, it's going to start moving over here.
Okay.
So it's going to be profitable for them to start like not flooding necessarily, but like bringing paper over cheaper. And that would be similar for all sorts of stuff, all sorts of products.
All right. Thanks.
Makes sense.
If you did it in Hong Kong, you went to Hong Kong, you got a loan, then it was paid back to dollar.
Yeah.
Right? So, I guess, if you wanted to do international trading, you could trade with Hong Kong dollars, and you are paid back in the US. So you don't have the risk. The risk is I guess, our exposure is the interest rate in Hong Kong, right? It's would probably be higher than the risk in the US.
Yeah.
Or does it follow the US?
That's what
No.
You're in international trading.
No.
That's not.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know. No, it does not. But I also don't trade Hong Kong.
Oh, it's just- That's what it was.
Thank you.
I believe that's the last slide. Yeah. So we're done with chapter 9.
Ah!
Yeah. So celebrate. Woo! Yeah. Oh,
How many questions will it have?
one.
Yeah.
Do you like only one question?
No.
How about two?
Either 100% or 0%.
Fail on this project. Is the individual case the last thing we have to do?
Huh?
Is the individual case the very last thing we have to do?
No, we still have a group.
Oh, we still have the group
Okay,
case.
group case.
20%.
And the individual case is due on Friday, right?
Yeah.
And then a group case due next week.
May 2nd.
Or
You
2
know what
weeks.
day next week?
Huh? Next for 2 weeks.
Is it Friday at 11:30 or Friday morning?
11:30 at night.
This Friday.
This Friday.
You have both individual cases that you expect just to work your two scenarios and
Now for the individual case, my expectation is that you do it as best as you can.
It's like 2 pages worth of words, 1 page worth of, tables.
That's the max. If you can make your
There's
point,
really
that's a
no
paragraph.
requirement, it's what you need to do. But just when you submit the paper and I read the paper and I feel satisfied, and that's a good paper.
Okay.
1 paragraph.
Easy
All right.
enough.
So just fundamentally, we're analyzing the two strategies.
Yeah, depending on, so you basically you try to.
I get very rich, tiny
recommendation
desserts.
To the company. What
Yeah.
company should do.
That's weird. No, it's like a lot of
Oh, one other thing, on our grades on those, so the bond case is our group case, but it's also under homework. So I wanted to confirm which one was the group case, because it's in 2 places. It's a homework case, it's listed as a homework case, but I thought that was a group case.
The homework page is the page that we discussed in house. Which is about 48.
So which case is our group case?
Hmm.
The 7 or the AIFS, the individual case is the Exonics, and the group is the hedging currency risk, the AIFS.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, back to your question, I haven't had the read yet. Yeah. But you should expect to have a short version of like a hedging case. So you should be able to use the different strategies, do some analysis, and tell me what would you recommend. That was it.
By the way, you didn't put up the answers, put up a 3.
I think I just did before class.
I'm just a short one of hedging, is that like what we covered in class today and the last class? The hedging, we talked about hedging.
Now from chapter 9 over chapter 8. Chapter 8 is introduction.
Chapter.
Oh my God. So you're gonna be able to short answer questions?
Short answer question. Yeah, that's possible.
Like related to those last 8 or so slides we just went over, like the different qualitative strategies like that.
No. Actually, what we done today, you can do it on calculator. But given that each exam time is only an hour 15 minutes, so I won't give you complicated stuff. So,
Relatively complicated stuff.
You know, really?
sure.
No, I'm not sure about anything.
You need to calculate using the financial calculator. It's some of the stuff.
Yeah, the last exam, I thought, had a lot of volume to it, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of arbitrage and all that, because of that. Will this one also have a lot of volume like that, a lot of steps? Because that was tough to do in that
So,
time.
yeah, you will cover from only chapter 8 and 9, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it will be like from chapter 8, transaction exposure. The focus is on financial hedge. Forward hedge is quite straightforward. Money market hedge, do the table. Option hedge could be complicated.
Yeah.
I guess the number of questions this time might not be as many as last time. Because I can simply just ask 2 questions. One on transaction exposure, one on economic exposure.
And they take a long time to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if 2 questions, 2 or 3 questions.
Practice it again, or just,
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did, yeah. for covariance, could you just explain to me what that means? And so what the covariance, does that mean if the spot rate goes up one, or the futures product goes up $1, your exposure increases, your exposure is equivalent to your covariance?
For the covariance?
Yeah. For the variance, the variance, I'm sorry. That's a measure of the spread of which you're exposed to, correct?
When we calculate variance, like for example, we are measuring, now SI is the, under an outcome, SI is the exchange rate, right? S bar is the mean exchange rate. So we are measuring how far is that outcome to the average behavior. So that's what the variance is measuring.
But in terms of the numerical value, how do you interpret that value?
It's easier to interpret standard deviation. Variance is just the square of standard deviation.
Yeah.
So does anyone remember the definition of standard deviation? Actually, no. Yeah. I can explain the in terms of variance actually. Yeah. So it is 39,000. Variance equal 39,000. I can interpret in terms of if one thing move up by this much, then the other thing move up this much.
Oh, so you can't measure that. Okay.
It only shows me how big versus how small. But standard deviation tells us is what percentage confidence? 90 or 95% confidence for what is the standard deviation? 295. So we see two standard deviation of 95% confidence that it will be within that range for standard deviation. But for the variance, it's a square of standard deviation. So we use the variance because mathematically we calculate slope, we need to use the variance.
Okay.
And the slope is the.
It just tells us when S move per unit of S movement, how much would D move with S? We're dividing by variance of S, right? So per unit of variance of S, how much might D move? So that's the slope. Mathematically, we use variance. Any other questions?
Will there be a buyback on this one too?
I think so, right? So we have, but don't depend on buyback.
I kind of
The student came to me yesterday, tried to talk about his performance up to date, and told him that it's not as bad as it looks for most of you. Because you get 10 on the homework or 9 on the homework, and we still have about 50% of grade and tutorials. I think that's why. That's scary. 20% is group report and 15% on the individual case report.
Or the case that you just got.
And you still have final exam that can replace the lowest exam. Yeah.
Do you have specific questions for the group report, or what was your, kind of like the individual?
The group report, I think for the group report, you'll have to do some sensitivity analysis. Right? So on the different exchange rates, how would that affect the company's earnings? But it's a company doing study abroad, right? If they didn't want to do that, me either. Any other questions?
We should put credit on the trading game as long as we have it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. The only company that's
Are we covering any new material or is it?
Yeah, the Tuesday afterwards, we're going to look at the currency swaps. It's exciting.
So if you do take the final exam, it's going to be on the rest of the material we cover, or is it going to be a comprehensive?
Now, yeah, that's a good question. For you say after exam 3, please take a look at the Disney case. I won't ask you turn anything in for that case, but if you want to learn the most out of it, please read the Disney case.
And that's for Tuesday, right?
Well, Mickey.
We were looking at this question yesterday, number 2 in the exam study. It says per annum, but it's a 3 months.
It's a typo. I corrected that, I believe.
Oh, you did?
Right. I'm not sure, but it should be 1 year.
It should be 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay. So that spot rate, that board rate should be 1 year. Okay.
I think I also changed the forward rate as well. If I did. Any other questions? Want to hear another story about economists?
Yeah.
Now, one day there were a group of people riding the hot air balloon. So, Sonia, ready?
Never hear that.
You know the story?
No.
And a big wind just blew them away, and they had no idea where they are. So up in the air from the hot air balloon, they saw economists on the ground. So they shouted down, "Sir, do you know where we are?" And the economist shout up, "Yeah, I know, you are in the hot air balloon." What can we get from the story? It is very true, but so useless.